On the outer rim of human space, Lisa Miller sat up straight at her station aboard the survey vessel Horizon. Her eyes widened as she noticed something unusual on her screen. A signal, faint but clear, was coming through the communication system. She adjusted her headset and leaned closer to hear better. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress call," she said, her voice steady despite the fear building inside her. Captain Alan Gardner looked up from his tablet. He was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and lines around his eyes from years of staring into space. "Source? Colony Epsilon, sir. It's breaking up, but it sounds bad." Gardner put down his tablet and walked over to Lisa's station. The bridge of the Horizon was small compared to military vessels, with just 5 crew stations arranged in a semicircle. As a survey ship, they weren't built for rescue missions or combat. Their job was to map stars and scan planets, not respond to emergencies. "Let me hear it," Gardner ordered. Lisa tapped her screen, and a broken voice filled the bridge. "Under attack. Unknown vessels. Heavy casualties. Need immediate help." The message cut out, replaced by static. Lisa worked, her controls trying to clean up the signal. "That's all I can get, sir. It keeps repeating." Gardner's face grew serious. "How old is the message?" "Based on transmission time, about 14 hours, sir." The captain straightened up and looked around at his small crew. The Horizon was the only human ship in this sector. Colony Epsilon was home to 15,000 people, scientists, farmers, engineers, and their families. They had gone there to build a new life on a promising world rich with resources. Now they were under attack, and the nearest military base was almost a week away at standard speeds. "Send the emergency code," Gardner ordered. "Full bandwidth, priority alpha." Lisa's fingers moved quickly across her console. Everyone on the bridge knew what this meant. In all of human history and space, a priority alpha signal had only been sent 3 times. It was a call that would reach every human military vessel, every base, and every colony. "Message ready, sir," Lisa said. Gardner nodded. "Send it." 5. Simple words went out across the vast distances of space, bouncing from relay to relay at speeds faster than light. Deathworlders request immediate military assistance. The effect was immediate. On every human military vessel, in every base, and at fleet headquarters, alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed. Screens lit up with the emergency code. Across human space, men and women dropped what they were doing and ran to their stations. Pilots sprinted to fighters. Engineers rushed to power up engines that had been idle for months. Officers who had been sleeping were shaken awake to be told the news. On Earth, Admiral Diane Summers was eating dinner at her home when her communication device buzzed. She looked at the message and set down her fork. Without a word to her family, she stood up and walked to her office. The door closed behind her with a soft click. 2 minutes later, she emerged wearing her uniform jacket. "I have to go," she told her husband. "Don't wait up." Her driver was already outside, the car's engine running. The trip to fleet headquarters took 12 minutes. By the time she arrived, the command center was fully staffed, with officers working at every station. Large screens showed maps of human space, with Colony Epsilon highlighted in red. "Status report," Summers demanded as she walked to the central. Platform Commander Ben Wilson turned to face her. "Distress call confirmed from Colony Epsilon. Attack by unknown forces. The survey vessel Horizon detected the call and sent the alpha signal." Summers nodded. Colony Epsilon was one of humanity's newer settlements, established just 7 years ago. It was prospering with regular supply runs and a growing population. Why anyone would attack it was a mystery, but the reason didn't matter right now. What mattered was the response. "Initiate Protocol Thunderhead," she ordered. "All vessels to combat status. Recall all personnel from leave. I want every ship we have ready to move in 12 hours. Wilson's eyes widened slightly. Protocol Thunderhead had never been activated before. It was the highest level of military mobilization possible, designed for only one scenario: an existential threat to humanity. "All ships, Admiral? Even the experimental vessels?" "All of them, Commander, especially the experimental ones." Summers' voice was firm. The colony called for help. They're going to get everything we have. The admiral turned to look at the main screen, where dots of light represented human ships scattered across dozens of star systems. Soon, those dots would be converging, forming the largest fleet ever assembled in human history. Across human space, the response began. On Mars, Lieutenant Kevin Boyd was teaching his young son to ride a bike when his comm unit buzzed. He read the message, kissed his son goodbye, and was in his fighter cockpit 20 minutes later, running pre-flight checks. His squadron, the 103rd Ghost Riders, had been on training rotation. Now they were preparing for war. In the orbital shipyards above Jupiter, Chief Engineer Grace Patterson was overseeing the final touches on the destroyer Unity when the alert came through. The ship wasn't due for completion for another month, but when she saw the priority alpha signal, she made a decision. Cancel all non-essential work, she told her team. Focus only on weapons, engines, and life support. This ship launches in 10 hours. Her deputy looked shocked. The navigation systems aren't fully calibrated. The crew quarters aren't finished. They can navigate with manual controls and sleep in shifts, Patterson replied. There are people dying at Epsilon. We don't have time for comfort or convenience. In the asteroid belt, Commander Peter Wright was overseeing a mining operation when he received the signal. Without hesitation, he ordered his team to convert their mining charges to military-grade explosives. His ship, the miner's dream, was slow and ungainly, but it could be turned into a floating arsenal given enough time. And if there was one thing the people of Earth had learned on their harsh, demanding homeworld, it was how to improvise weapons. The most dramatic transformation happened aboard the Defiance. The massive battleship had been humanity's secret project for years, hidden in a special dock behind the moon. Its experimental drive was designed to tear holes in space itself, rather than simply traveling through it. Its weapon systems were unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever seen. Captain Natalie Chen stood on the bridge, watching as her crew rushed to their stations. Many were being assigned to the ship for the first time, transferred from other vessels to fill out the roster. They looked nervous but determined. This isn't a drill, Chen told them over the ship-wide communication system. We're jumping straight into combat. We don't know who we're fighting or why they're attacking our people. What we do know is that Epsilon Colony is counting on us. Deathworlders don't abandon their own. A cheer went up from the crew. Humans had been called Deathworlders by the Galactic Council for years. It was meant as an insult, a reference to Earth's high gravity, extreme weather, and dangerous wildlife. But humans had embraced the term, turning it into a badge of honor. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them daily, and they had not only survived but thrived. Now someone was about to learn what that really meant. The news of the attack on Colony Epsilon spread quickly through human space. Within hours of Admiral Summers giving the order, military bases on every human world were alive with activity. Ships that had not left dock in years were being prepared for battle. Reserve officers found themselves suddenly in command of vessels they had only trained on in simulations. On the planet New Terra, Ryan Cooper was having dinner with his family when his old military communicator beeped for the first time in 5 years. He looked at the message, then at his wife. They're calling everyone back, he said quietly. His wife, Ellie, put down her fork. Their 2 children, too young to understand, continued eating. How bad is it? She asked. Priority Alpha, Colony Epsilon, is under attack. Ryan stood up, already moving toward the closet where his uniform was stored. I have to report to the Lincoln within an hour. Ellie nodded, her face pale but determined. We'll be fine. Do what you need to do. 2 hours later, Captain Ryan Cooper stood on the bridge of the destroyer Lincoln. Half his crew were reservists like him, called up on emergency status. The other half were regular military who looked too young to be wearing their uniforms. His executive officer, Susan Wright, had been a high school science teacher until this morning. Engineering reports the main drive is online, Captain, Wright reported. Weapon systems are at 80%. We can launch within the hour. Cooper nodded. The Lincoln was an older model destroyer, meant for patrol duties rather than front-line combat. But right now, humanity needed every ship it could get. Tell engineering to focus on the shield generators, he ordered. We can fight with 80% weapons, but we need 100% shields if we're going into a hot zone. Across the fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Officers who had never expected to see combat were preparing their ships and crews. Weapons that had been theoretical were being activated. Plans that had existed only in classified simulations were now being implemented. In orbit around Saturn, Dr. John Martinez activated a series of commands on his research vessel. The ship, officially named the Explorer, had been built for deep space scientific study. Unofficially, it housed weapon systems that even most of the military didn't know existed. Begin Prometheus Protocol, Martinez instructed his small team of scientists and engineers. Convert all primary research equipment to combat mode. His second-in-command, Dr. Samantha Lee, looked uncomfortable. Sir, some of these systems have never been tested outside of simulations. Then we'll be testing them in combat, Martinez replied calmly. The Galactic Council has spent years calling us dangerous Deathworlders while pretending to be our friends. Now someone is attacking our people. It's time to show them why Earth species should be feared. The ship's exterior began to change as panels shifted, revealing weapon ports that had been disguised as scientific instruments. Inside, walls moved to create a combat control center where the main laboratory had been. On Mars, the 103rd Fighter Squadron prepared to launch. Lieutenant Kevin Boyd checked his neural interface one last time before climbing into his fighter. The small, agile craft didn't look impressive compared to the massive battleships, but a full squadron of Earth fighters could destroy a cruiser in under 5 minutes if they worked together. Ghost Riders, check in, Boyd called over the squadron frequency. One by one, his pilots responded. There were 12 of them, each in an identical fighter craft. They had trained together for 3 years, becoming one of the most effective squadrons in the fleet. Mission parameters are being uploaded now, Boyd told them as their onboard computers received the battle plans. We'll be stationed on the carrier Relentless. Launch in 5 minutes. Our job is to protect the colony and take out any enemy fighters. The pilots acknowledged the orders. None of them needed to be told what was at stake. Colony Epsilon represented everything humanity had worked for since reaching the stars. A peaceful settlement where people could build new lives. An attack on the colony was an attack on that dream. At fleet headquarters, Admiral Summers studied the deployment map. Nearly 300 ships were now preparing for combat operations, from small patrol vessels to the massive battleship Defiance. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, and it was preparing to use technologies that had been kept secret from the rest of the galaxy. What's the status of the special weapons? She asked Commander Wilson. He checked his tablet. The gravity lance is operational on the Defiance. The phase disruptors are being installed on the cruisers Judgment and Retribution. The carrier Indomitable has the Nova bombs ready for deployment. Summers nodded. These weapons had been developed in secret, hidden from the inspectors of the Galactic Council. For years, humanity had played the role of the eager newcomer to galactic society, accepting the Deathworlder label with good humor while quietly preparing for the day when they would need to defend themselves. That day had come. Any update from Colony Epsilon? Summers asked. Wilson's expression grew grim. Nothing since the initial distress call. The orbital defense station has gone silent. We're assuming it's been destroyed. Summers closed her eyes briefly, thinking of the personnel who had been stationed on that defense platform. They had been the colony's first line of protection, and they had fallen doing their duty. Time to arrival for our first ships? The Defiance can be on station in 20 hours. Using the new drive system, Wilson reported. The destroyers Lightning and Storm can arrive shortly after. The main fleet will take 3 to 4 days depending on how much we push the engines. Tell the Defiance to push their drive to maximum, Summers ordered. I want Captain Chen on site as soon as possible. The rest of the fleet will follow at best possible speed. Aboard the Defiance, Captain Chen received the new orders with a grim smile. The experimental spacefold drive had never been pushed to its limits outside of controlled tests. Using it at maximum power was risky, but she understood the Admiral's urgency. Every hour they delayed meant more colonists might die. Engineering, prepare for maximum fold, she ordered. I want us at Colony Epsilon in 18 hours. The chief engineer's voice came back tense but determined. Captain, at that power level, there's a 20% chance of drive failure. Noted, Chen replied. Proceed with the preparations. The massive battleship hummed as power built up in its core. Unlike conventional faster-than-light drives that move through space, the fold drive would tear a hole in space itself, creating a shortcut to their destination. It was the most advanced technology humans had ever created, developed, by studying the ruins of an ancient civilization found on Mars. Throughout the ship, the crew prepared for battle. Weapons officers checked their systems. Medical teams readied their sick bays for casualties. Marines cleaned their rifles and loaded their combat suits into drop pods. As the hour of departure approached, Captain Chen addressed her crew one final time. We are about to engage in the first major fleet action in human history. The people attacking Colony Epsilon believe they are striking a soft target. They are about to learn why humans are called Deathworlders. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day, and we not only survived, we conquered it. Now we will show the galaxy what that really means. A cheer went up from the crew as the countdown to fold began. The Defiance, humanity's greatest warship, was going to war. Colony Epsilon had been under attack for 36 hours. The main settlement was surrounded by alien ships that had landed troops on the surface. The colony's small security force fought bravely, but they were not soldiers. They had police-grade weapons and minimal training. Against a military force, they were outmatched. Colonel Frank Williams led the colony's defense from a natural cave system beneath the main settlement. The caves had been mapped when the colony was first established, and now they served as both a refuge for civilians and a base for the remaining defenders. Status report, Williams said to his second-in-command, Officer Kelly Davis. Davis looked tired. Her uniform was dirty, and a bandage covered a burn on her left arm. We've lost contact with security teams 2 and 5. The aliens have control of the spaceport and the power plant. They're moving toward the research center. Williams nodded grimly. The research center contained the colony's most valuable data, years of scientific work that had been the main purpose of establishing Epsilon in the first place. What about the civilians? 8,000 in the cave system, Davis reported. Maybe another 3,000 scattered in smaller groups across the colony. We've lost contact with the outlying settlements. Williams didn't ask about the other 4,000 colonists who were unaccounted for. The answer was written on Davis's face. Ammunition? Running low. Maybe enough for another day of fighting if we're careful. Williams checked his own weapon, an old-style rifle that fired metal projectiles rather than energy beams. It was technology the aliens might not be prepared for, which gave it an advantage over more modern weapons. Hold the line, he told his people over the radio. Help is coming. Some of his officers exchanged doubtful looks. They knew the nearest military base was 6 days away at normal faster-than-light speeds. By then, the colony would be lost. What they didn't know was that humanity had been keeping secrets from the rest of the galaxy. Their ships could move much faster than anyone suspected. Their weapons were much more advanced than what they showed to Galactic Council inspectors. And their response to an attack on their people would be far more devastating than anyone had predicted. In high orbit above the colony, Supreme Hunter Vex Tall of the Corvallian Imperium watched the battle progress. His ship, the Void Talon, was the command vessel for the attack force. From his view screen, he could see the other 19 ships of his fleet surrounding the human colony. The resistance continues to weaken, reported his second-in-command. We estimate complete control of the settlement within 12 hours. Vexatal nodded, his scaled head reflecting the blue light of the command center. The Corvallians were reptilian, evolved from apex predators on a jungle world. They considered themselves natural hunters, and humans were their latest prey. What of their transmission? Was it intercepted? Yes, Supreme Hunter. Their distress call was sent, but the nearest human military base is too far to respond in time. Vextal made a sound that might have been a laugh. These Deathworlders are not as dangerous as the Council fears. Their weapons are simple. Their defenses are weak. Once we have control of this colony, we will use their own research to strengthen our position. That's when his sensor operator spoke up, voice urgent. Supreme Hunter, we're detecting anomalies at the edge of the system. Vexitol turned to the sensor display. What kind of anomalies? Unknown, sir. Not the normal signature of ships exiting faster than light travel. Something different. Before the Corvallian commander could respond, space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of the system. A massive ship emerged from what looked like a hole in reality. It was nearly a kilometer long, its black hull bristling with weapon ports. True, sensor operator's voice rose in alarm. Sir, that vessel is reading as nearly 3 times the size of any known human warship. Vexitol stared at the image on his screen. This was impossible. The humans were a relatively new species to space travel. They didn't have technology like this. The Galactic Council's intelligence reports had been clear. Human ships were primitive compared to those of the older species. Scan it, he ordered. I want to know everything about that vessel. Before the scan could complete, 7 more spatial tiers opened around the system. More human ships appeared. The scout ships Lightning and Storm emerged, flanking the larger cruisers Judgment and Retribution. The heavy carriers Indomitable and Relentless appeared directly above the planet, already launching fighter squadrons. And at the system's edge, the research vessel Breakthrough arrived, its scientific instruments already scanning every Corvallian ship. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're being hailed by the human vessel. Vexitol hesitated, then nodded. Put it through. A human female appeared on the screen. She wore a dark uniform with simple rank insignia. Her hair was cut short, and her expression was cold. This is Captain Natalie Chen of the Human Defense Fleet, she said, her voice calm, but filled with menace. You have attacked a human colony and killed human civilians. Under the Deathworlder Articles of War, you are hereby condemned. You will receive no warning shots, no demands for surrender, and no mercy. The transmission cut off. Vexitol turned to his weapons officer. Target that ship and fire all weapons. The Void Talon's weapons came to life, sending energy beams and missiles toward the Defiance. At the same time, Captain Chen gave a simple order. Fire. The human battleship's response was devastating. A beam of concentrated gravity shot from its main weapon, striking the Void Talon dead center. The Corvallian ship didn't explode. It imploded, crushed by forces that warped space itself. Within seconds, the massive command vessel was reduced to a ball of compressed matter, no larger than a small asteroid. In the colony below, Colonel Williams and his defenders heard a sound they had been waiting for, the roar of human fighters entering the atmosphere. Through gaps in the cave ceiling, they could see the small agile craft of the 103rd Squadron streaking across the sky. Lieutenant Boyd led his fighters in a perfect attack formation. Target the alien ground forces, he ordered. Avoid the colony structures, fire at will. The Ghost Riders swept low over the alien positions, their weapons blazing. Unlike conventional fighters, these craft were armed with precision gravity weapons, smaller versions of what the Defiance had used to destroy the Corvallian command ship. Each shot didn't just damage its target, it warped the space around it, crushing everything within a small radius. The effect on the Corvallian ground forces was immediate. They had never encountered weapons like this. Their defensive shields, designed to stop energy blasts and projectiles, did nothing against attacks that manipulated gravity itself. In orbit, the battle continued. The human vessels moved with unexpected speed and coordination, focusing their fire on one Corvallian ship at a time. The cruiser Judgment used its phase disruptors to render 2 enemy vessels completely helpless, their systems frozen in a bubble of altered time. The carrier Relentless launched a second wave of fighters, these armed with Nova bombs, weapons that created miniature nuclear reactions inside enemy shields. Dr. Martinez's research vessel, the Breakthrough, proved to be perhaps the most terrifying ship in the human fleet. Its sensors mapped every detail of the Corvallian vessels, identifying weaknesses in real time and transmitting targeting data to the other human ships. When it finally fired its own weapons, it didn't target the enemy vessels themselves but the space around them, creating distortions that trapped 3 Corvallian ships in a field of warped physics. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Chen watched the battle unfold. "Status report," she ordered. "Enemy fleet at 60% and falling," her tactical officer responded. "Our forces are taking minimal damage. The Lightning reports minor shield failures but is still combat effective." Chen nodded. "Begin landing. Operations. Get our Marines to the surface to support the colony defenders." Across the system, drop pods launched from the human ships, each carrying a squad of Marines in powered combat armor. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were humans who had trained specifically to fight in the high gravity of Earth. In the lower gravity of Colony Epsilon, they moved with incredible speed and strength, closing to combat range before the Corvallians could effectively respond. The battle for Colony Epsilon lasted just under 4 hours. The Corvallian forces, despite their larger numbers, found themselves outmatched by human technology and tactics that had been developed in secret. In the cave system beneath the colony, Colonel Williams heard the sounds of combat growing closer. Heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnel leading to their position. He raised his rifle, and beside him Officer Davis did the same. The remaining security personnel formed a line in front of the civilians, prepared to make their last stand. Shaker. Footsteps grew louder. Then a voice called out, "Human Defense Force, we're coming in." Williams almost collapsed with relief. "Hold your fire," he told his people. "They're ours." A squad of Marines in powered combat armor appeared in the tunnel entrance. Their suits were matte black with the Human Defense Fleet symbol on the chest. Each Marine carried weapons that Williams had never seen before, not the standard rifles that civilian security forces were issued, but something far more advanced. The squad leader stepped forward and removed her helmet. "Major Linda Harris, 2nd Marine Division," she said. "We're here to help, Colonel." Williams nodded, too exhausted to speak for a moment. "The civilians," he finally managed to say. "Safe now," Harris assured him. "We've secured the perimeter. The Corvallians are retreating to their remaining ships." She paused, then added, "You held out longer than anyone could have expected, Colonel. Your people saved thousands of lives." Above the planet, the space battle was ending. Of the 20 Corvallian ships that had attacked the colony, 14 had been destroyed outright. 3 were disabled and drifting in space. The remaining 3 had attempted to flee the system, but were intercepted by the newly arrived diplomatic vessel Accord, which had been recalled from its mission to the Galactic Council. The Accord was officially listed as an unarmed diplomatic ship. In reality, it carried weapons specifically designed to disable rather than destroy. As the last functioning Corvallian vessel, the cruiser Darkclaw tried to activate its faster-than-light drive. The Accord fired a single pulse that disrupted the engine core, leaving the ship stranded. Captain Samuel Jackson of the Accord opened a communication channel to the stranded vessel. "Corvallian cruiser, this is Captain Jackson of the Human Defense Fleet. Your ship is disabled. Your fleet is destroyed. You will be boarded and your crew taken prisoner." There was a long pause before a response came. "This is Sub-Commander Nexaval of the Corvallian Imperium. We surrender." Jackson nodded to his first officer. "Prepare boarding teams. I want their commander alive for questioning." Admiral Summers watched the reports come in from her command center on Earth. The victory had been swift and decisive, but it had come at a cost. Early estimates suggested that nearly 4,000 colonists had been killed before help arrived. The Orbital Defense Station's crew of 200 had been lost when the station was destroyed in the initial attack. And while the human fleet had suffered minimal casualties, there were still injuries and deaths among the crews. "Send medical ships to Epsilon immediately," she ordered, "and begin recovery operations for the defense station personnel." "Commander," Wilson nodded. "Already underway, Admiral. The hospital ship Mercy is en route and should arrive within 12 hours. Summers studied the tactical display, showing the positions of the human fleet around Colony Epsilon. "What about the prisoners?" "Captain Jackson has secured the Corvallian commander and several high-ranking officers," Wilson reported. They're being transferred to the Accord for interrogation. Summers' expression hardened. I want to know why they targeted us specifically. This wasn't a random attack. They went straight for one of our research colonies. The interrogation of Supreme Hunter Vexatal took place in a secure compartment aboard the Accord. Captain Jackson conducted it personally, with Dr. Martinez of the Breakthrough attending as a scientific advisor. The Corvallian commander sat across from them, his scaled hands bound by restraints that prevented any movement. Why did you attack Colony Epsilon? Jackson asked without preamble. Vextal's vertical pupils narrowed. We are Corvallians. We take what we want. Martinez leaned forward. That's not an answer. Your empire is 12 light years from this colony. You passed 3 other systems to reach this one. Why this colony specifically? The Corvallian remained. Silent, Jackson sighed. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you tell us what we want to know. The hard way involves a neural scanner that will extract the information directly from your brain. It's not pleasant, and it's not always precise. Vextal's scales darkened slightly, the Corvallian equivalent of paling in fear. You wouldn't dare. The Galactic Council forbids such technology. The same council that classified us as Deathworlders? Jackson smiled coldly. They were right to fear us. Now, one last time. Why target Colony Epsilon? The Corvallian commander looked down at the table. We were contracted to test your defenses. Martinez and Jackson exchanged glances. Contracted? Martinez asked. By whom? The Security Directorate of the Galactic Council, Vexatal said quietly. They paid us to attack a human colony and report on your military response. They wanted to assess your capabilities. Jackson felt a cold anger building inside him. You killed thousands of civilians. To gather intelligence? Vextal's head bobbed in what might have been a shrug. The Directorate assured us that human military forces were primitive and slow to respond. We expected to complete our assessment and leave before any significant defense arrived. His eyes fixed on Jackson. They were wrong about you. Very wrong. Martinez's face showed disgust. So this entire attack was a test? A way for the Council to gauge our military strength? Yes, the Corvallian admitted. For decades, humans have been classified as a potential threat species by the Council. They wanted to know if the classification was accurate. He made a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. I believe they have their answer. The information was immediately transmitted to Admiral Summers and to Earth's government. President Olivia Martinez received the intelligence report in her office, surrounded by her top advisors. Her face showed cold fury as she read the details. They sacrificed 15,000 of our people to gauge our response, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. The Galactic Council, the same organization that welcomed us into interstellar society, secretly paid mercenaries to attack our colony. The Secretary of Defense, Paul Wilson, nodded grimly. It appears so, Madam President. Options? Admiral, Summers has the fleet at full readiness, Wilson replied. We can have 300 ships at the edge of Council space within 48 hours. The President was silent for a long moment, considering. The Galactic Council represented 50 species and thousands of worlds. Going to war with them would be devastating, even with humanity's advanced technology. But allowing this attack to go unanswered was unthinkable. Send the fleet, she ordered finally. Have them take position just outside Council territory, and recall Ambassador Collins from retirement. I believe he's the right person to deliver our response. Wilson nodded. Yes, Madam President. I believe they've learned their lesson about provoking Deathworlders, Martinez added, but I want to make absolutely certain. Throughout human space, the order went out. The full human defense fleet would assemble at the edge of Council space. It would be the largest show of force in human history. The Galactic Council chamber was the largest indoor space ever built by any species. Shaped like a perfect dome, it had seats for representatives from 50 different species arranged in rising tiers. At the center was a speaking platform where those addressing the Council would stand. News of the human fleet's approach had thrown the Council into panic. Nearly 300 human warships had taken position just beyond the boundary of Council space. The representatives argued frantically about how to respond. Some wanted to gather their own fleets for a military response. Others pushed for an immediate apology and diplomatic solution. "We should strike first," urged the Voltan representative, his tentacles waving in agitation. "The humans are primitives. Their victory over the Corvallians was luck." Luck? The Zentari delegates' crystalline form pulsed with blue light. "They destroyed 20 Corvallian warships in 4 hours. That was not luck." The council chairperson, a tall, thin being from the ancient Mithran species, called for order. "We will not decide this matter through shouting. The Security Directorate's actions were not authorized by the full council. We must—" The chamber's main doors slid open, interrupting the chairperson. A single human walked in, an older male with white hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He wore a simple dark suit without decoration. Behind him came 2 younger humans, a man and a woman, carrying data tablets. The chamber fell silent as the human walked to the center platform. Council protocol required all delegates to be announced and given permission to speak. This human had simply walked in. The chairperson recovered first. "This chamber is in closed session. You have no authority to—" "I am Ambassador Eric Collins, of Earth," the human said, his calm voice somehow filling the massive space. "I have come to deliver humanity's response to your attack on our colony." The chairperson's inner eyelids blinked rapidly. Ambassador Collins was retired 2 years ago. "We have been dealing with Ambassador Chen." "Ambassador Chen has been recalled," Collins replied. "I have been asked to handle this specific situation." He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with several representatives. "I was the first human to set foot in this chamber 27 years ago. I helped negotiate our entry into the council, and now I am here to inform you of our terms." The word terms caused a murmur to run through the representatives. The humans were outnumbered by the combined forces of the council. They had no right to dictate terms. "The fleet at your border suggests violence," the chairperson said. "This is not how council members behave." Collins smiled without humor. "The attack on Colony Epsilon is not how council members behave either. Yet it happened, ordered by your security directorate." He gestured, and one of his assistants handed him a datapad. "We have the full confession of Supreme Hunter Vex Tal, including payment records and communication logs. This was not the action of rogue Corvallians. It was a deliberate test of human defenses, authorized by members of this council." The chamber erupted in voices as representatives demanded to see the evidence. Collins waited patiently until the noise subsided. "For centuries, you have called us Deathworlders and treated us with suspicion," Collins continued. "You have deemed us dangerous because we evolved on a planet that demanded strength and adaptability. You were right to fear us, but wrong to test us." He touched the datapad, and a holographic display appeared above the platform. It showed images from Colony Epsilon, buildings destroyed, bodies being recovered, children crying for parents who would never return. 15,000 civilians lived on Epsilon, Collins said quietly. 4,318 died because of your test. They were scientists, teachers, farmers, and children. They had no defenses because we believed they were living in peaceful council space. The images changed to show the human fleet now positioned at the edge of council territory. The ships were arranged in attack formation, weapons visible and ready. "We could have crossed your border already," Collins continued. "We could have targeted your worlds as you targeted ours. Our fleet is more powerful than you know. What you saw at Epsilon was only a fraction of our capability." Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Instead, we offer terms." Collins looked directly at the chairperson. "First, the Galactic Council will formally acknowledge responsibility for the attack on Colony Epsilon and issue a public apology. Second, you will pay reparations to rebuild the colony and compensate the families of those who died. Third, the Security Directorate will be immediately disbanded and its leaders tried for war crimes." A shocked silence filled the chamber. "Finally," Collins continued, Humans will be granted full integration into the Council with equal voting rights on all matters, including security and technology sharing. The classification of humans as Deathworlders will be officially removed from all Council records. The Voltan representative rose from his seat. This is outrageous. You cannot dictate terms to the Council. We have existed for thousands of years before your species even left its planet. Collins turned to face him. You have 2 standard days to accept these terms, he said calmly, or you will learn exactly why we are called Deathworlders. The chamber exploded in angry shouts and protests. The chairperson tried to restore order, but the representatives continued arguing amongst themselves. Collins and his assistants waited, silently at the center of the storm. In orbit around the Council homeworld, the diplomatic vessel Accord received the transmission from Ambassador Collins. Message delivered. Captain Jackson nodded to his communications officer. Send word to the fleet. Be ready for anything. The Council deliberated for 11 hours. Despite the protests of several warlike species, the majority recognized the reality of their situation. The humans had revealed capabilities far beyond what anyone had suspected. The attack on Epsilon had been meant to probe for weaknesses. Instead, it had awakened a sleeping giant. The chairperson's message was transmitted to the human fleet the next morning. The Council accepts your terms in full. 1 month later, Admiral Summers stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Memorial on Epsilon Colony. Below, reconstruction was well underway. New buildings were rising where destroyed ones had stood. The population was growing again as new colonists arrived, along with some of the original settlers who had fled during the attack. The memorial bore the names of all who had perished, along with a simple inscription. Their distress call awakened the fleet. Beside her, Captain Chen of the Defiance gazed out at the rebuilt colony. Do you think they'll try again? She asked. Summers shook her head. They've seen what happens when you threaten a Deathworlder colony. Our response to a single distress call brought their entire political system to its knees. As night fell on the colony, the new orbital defense station, 10 times larger and armed with technologies that had previously been kept secret, cast a protective shadow over the planet. Throughout human space, the fleet remained vigilant, no longer hiding its true nature. Humans now sat as equals in the Galactic Council. The term Deathworlder remained, but it was no longer spoken as an insult. It was whispered with respect and a touch of fear. The galaxy had learned a crucial lesson. Never underestimate creatures who evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. Their capacity for destruction was matched only by their dedication to protecting their own. And it had all started with one distress call.